is Jamila Al Yousef. I'm a diasporic Palestinian that was born on the day in Berlin when the wall came down. I'm a musician, theater maker, anti-racism and empowerment trainer. And for many, many years, I used to organize festivals like programs like the Arab Underground with the aim to bring here Arab underground cultures and discuss political and historical events and continuities.
لك الشام لولا المظالم كانت فوق المدن جنات.
Yeah, it's incredible to be born on that day knowing that a wall is in my home country in Palestine, and I always wish that it will also fall with all the other walls and racist border systems on this planet before I die. It has impacted us a lot, I guess, because on the one hand, of course, there was all this freedom. My mom is East German. I always say I'm double East German and Middle Eastern. But with the fall of the wall and the end of the Soviet system or society, also very big support for the Palestinian cause was gone, right? So there was like a really big solidarity within the people, within the community in the GDR, in the Eastern Bloc, that supported the Palestinian liberation struggle unconditionally. So also I later realized what a big pain it was for my father's generation that this support has been gone, and that many people in Germany and that came from the eastern parts kind of assimilated to the mainstream discourse. I was lucky to go to school with former GDR teachers, because they were still super open about learning more about Palestine. I was able to speak about Zionism. I actually wrote my A-levels in history, and I wrote a book of 100 pages discussing the Palestine question and the international responsibility for this, and talking about the Nakba and the Zionist terror attacks and all of that. So I was able to even like present that in front of 500 people in the school, you know. So I was lucky when I see now people who are going to school, what they're going through as Palestinians or as people who want to speak about Palestine. It's very horrible. I think a lot of people are really afraid these days. I mean, there are the crucial ones who actually really take to the streets, who risk things in their work life, in their universities, in the culture field, in their personal relationships, right, to actually speak about Palestine and thrive for freedom and collective liberation. But of course, the majority is afraid to say anything. Like, I see even those people who don't speak openly, when they speak within their internal family systems or friend circles, how they even they're already struggling to dare to say something, right? So like there's this big fear to lose something, I guess. I think joining the liberation struggle was always present. My dad is Palestinian. He was 1 year old when his mother died, Jamila, whom I inherited the name from. His dad died when he was 4. At 14, he became a refugee during the Nakba, so he was expelled from the West Bank and not allowed to return. And despite all of that, he managed to become a very political person, a doctor advocating for Palestinian, but also international rights for everyone, right? So he's the most inspiring figure. Like the way he took in his life, coming from that hardship in his childhood and youth, is just incredible, right? So I grew up always, like already as a child, there's a video, I'm 3 years old and I'm giving a speech about the good heart and that like we have to fight for freedom. And, you know, when I was 12, I wrote the first article about Palestine. It was the time when Arafat was under house arrest. And I wrote in the school newspaper an article called Imagine Schröder under house arrest. When I was 14, I organized the first like music festival in the town we went to in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern in Güstrow against right-wing uprisings, you know. So it was always there. I grew up very politicized, and I'm super grateful because both my parents really always empowered me and educated me. We always talked about world politics, world history, you know, and also on the small scale, I learned what injustice is and that we never can accept it. Like if a teacher was unfair to another student or students amongst each other, I would always interfere. I would never be still. This is how I grew up. And yeah, I'm eternally grateful that these are my parents, and also that my ancestors, I feel such a gratitude. I don't know my grandmother, for example. But once Jamila, my sister Jamila, appeared in my dream, and it was one of the most horrible nights of my life. Like I always had nightmares of having to flee, soldiers coming, war, I think this trauma is really passed on. And one time my heart racing was so strong and I was half awake, half asleep, and I thought like, now that's it, I will die. And in this crazy fear, Sitti Jamila appeared. And she was like flowing in the universe with really long orange hair and speaking calmly in Arabic to me, soothing me down. And then I still had this crazy heart racing. So she made me become a rocket and like threw me to her into the universe. And we were like together, like swimming through galaxies of freedom, And at some point she looked at me, she was like, Jamila, you're safe now. You can go back on Earth. And she let me drop down. And in that dream, I knew I arrived at the lake, the war scene was gone. And I knew, okay, I'm really safe now. I can wake myself up now. And I woke up and I knew, wow, I just met Sitti Jamila. And we don't even have a photo of her. We don't even know how she looks like, but she came to my dream. So that was one of many signs where I feel that the power of our ancestors and everything they went through so that we can live today, that we can be freer than them, is so strong, as such a force for me to be active. I think like what I can offer in the movement is to actually create spaces for our emotions, because only when we are able to feel our grief, our anger, but also the connection we have, we can keep on to be able to speak and act in this very devastating time. So for me, music as a teenager, for example, I felt really alienated and alone. Although I'm white passing Palestinian, I still felt very not belonging. And music was my home. أنا بدي أعرف شو قصدك، أنا بدي أعرف مين أنا، بابا يا بابا من وين إحنا، ماما يا ماما لوين رحنا، من زمان كنا فراشة. And now I have the luck to have a band that is called Jamila and the Other Heroes, also honoring my grandmother. And we can use music to create spaces, concerts. I mean, the live moment is really important, where we go through all these different emotions, where we offer the people to really feel grief, to really feel their anger, but also to feel joy. That again, our ancestors went through so much, so also that we can feel joy. We can feel joy in our political struggle. I think that's very important to keep going. And we try to offer these energy spaces, to be less alone and less isolated, and then to come back on the streets and back in different projects. And for me, this is the biggest gift, the energy we can send and get back. It's like an energy loop. So that's one way, but also with the lyrics I write, like most of my songs are somehow related to Palestine, liberation, empowerment, about my father, about I had the luck between 2009 and 2011 to work in Jenin in different cultural projects, and we made a song honoring Giuliano Mechamis, who built up the Freedom Theater and was murdered there brutally in 2011, And there's this one sentence he always says, a weapon with no culture behind it only kills, but never liberates. And I think that is so important also for us today and for us artists also today, because we all hold our artistic weapons, definitely not to kill, but only to liberate, right? And we have the chance to raise awareness also for those who are not yet so educated about the topics. We have the chance to create spaces for empathy, for moving people. I believe trying to convince people, I don't do that anymore. I will not sit with people and discuss and trying to convince them with facts. Like if I don't manage to reach someone's heart, it doesn't matter, So I think art is the chance to reach people's hearts that are already closed, to like crack them a bit open, So for me, the music is into both directions. First of all, for my community and those who stand in solidarity with us, to have spaces of togetherness and to empower each other and be less alone. And on the other hand, for people that are not yet so aware of these topics, to learn more, be open to learn more, and to be empathetic. I mean, for me, clearly, there is no such thing that is apolitical. And the least thing people have to know is when they choose not to speak about the big topics of our time that affect so many people, is to be aware that that's a choice. That's not the normal. That's a choice. I understand people being afraid to lose something, but I think then we should rather think of what alternative security structures can we build, right? Like when somebody loses gigs, how can we have alternative networks to book shows, to find access to the music industry? Like how I think we really are in need of alternative structures to also elevate people to hopefully be more courageous and speak up. I mean, I think, again, it's my upbringing, because my parents, they both came from backgrounds where they were the first to study, where they're the first to do something that was not meant for them. You know what I mean? So I grew up with like, I can ask for things, and if they say no, I can ask why. And then if they still say no, I can keep asking. Like there's something I grew up with to not easily give in. For example, when I was 19, I went to the Fusion Festival for the first time. And I thought, like, how great would it be to have a space here to speak about, like, the movement in Palestine, artistic resistance forms, etc. I just wrote them an email, like really naively, you know, and I was like, hey, I would like to have a space about the cultural resistance. I would like to invite like a theater group from Jenin and some artists, some musicians, la 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 la. Bukahara actually were playing there for the first time when we did that space. And then one of the founders of the festival invited me and said, like, if you're in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, just come over, let's have a tea. And we sat down, and I dared to go there. And I must say, I mean, it was a long journey, because also lots of things changed from that first project. It was called the Free Olive Tent. Actually, Arab Underground developed, because we had all the Arab uprisings from starting 2011. And we were there in the festival for many years, and we could see also a rise of anti-Deutsche mindsets and also attacks against us. We were a space where hundreds of artists and activists from North Africa and West Asia were invited with the support of the festival. But also I always had to struggle, you know, I had to demand that someone who was just becoming a refugee, for example, shouldn't sleep in the normal camping space because it's super overwhelming. So I was always like, oh, who's this Jamila to ask for these things? I'm like, no, it's about care. Like if we want to raise awareness, if we want to have safer spaces, and people are really affected by war and trauma and refuge, we have to think further, you know. And this is something I still always have to demand. But why I'm doing, I think it's, I don't know, I feel it's in my genes and upbringing. Yeah. And also in Berlin, like I'm so grateful there's still spaces, alternative spaces. Like I was in Palestine in October 23 and with my family in Nablus, you know, and it was super devastating time. And even before coming back, I was defamed on German national radio, you know, because apparently I wouldn't mourn Jewish lives because they couldn't find a statement on my band's page, which is ridiculous, you know, like I, of course, mourn Jewish lives. I have friends there and so on. And even before coming back, I thought like, okay, what can I offer going back to my community in Berlin that is already facing demonstration prohibitions, police violence, and all of this? So I thought like we need some kind of mental health care empowerment spaces. So I started an empowerment group. It was a Signal group, like right in the beginning, mid-October. And we had a daily call at 6 p.m. and everyone was welcome to just join, to not be alone. We met in person. We did gatherings to go outside of Berlin and be together. And we organized several cultural events, like for example at Artistania, like in the beginning of November, Embodying Resilience was like the first gathering where we brought different Palestinian and other cultural practitioners through music and workshops and knowledge production to also keep spreading awareness and being less alone and together. This project keeps me hopeful. Reclaim the narratives, like everyone within the global north fighting the dominance culture, the dominance narratives. Every person that is asking, how are you doing? How's your family? How are your friends? All the groups that have emerged, a strong feeling of togetherness. And I feel like wherever I travel, also outside of Germany, like I was doing also solidarity gigs in the Netherlands and Portugal and like different places. wherever I go, I enter a space where I know nobody, and I leave it with friends. And I am part of a sense of common understanding of what is justice and what is empathy. And this gives me so much hope. All the people who are waking up or who already woke up and are active and who don't give in and who keep demanding things and who keep taking to the streets and risking their jobs. And I think I feel feels very humbling to see, and to also not forget all the other struggles. It's not just about Palestine. We're speaking of collective liberation, right? Like, be it the Kurdish, be it the situation in Congo and Sudan. There's so much injustice, and we have to see the intersectionality of these struggles. And I see that that is happening, and that gives me hope too. The current climate in Germany and the global north basically is an intellectual and psychological warfare. So we witness the wars in the global south, in Palestine and beyond, in the region, where tragedies, atrocities, without even finding the right words for it, are happening. And here we see the intellectual and psychological warfare, especially in the culture and media. So what is happening is that there is a climate of extreme fear, like chilling effects, to keep people quiet, right? Cultural institutions, I'm a consultant against racism in cultural institutions, actually, right? They are the spaces where we actually debate social political topics. We have not debated Palestine at all, right? We had to go to the streets, again, that we are prohibited from through immense police violence. So the climate we're in Germany is a big fear. Like, there's a cloud of fear that is above everyone. Like, who is doing what consequences can I have if I say this, what consequences can I have if I take part in that panel, if I say this in a concert. The other day I had police come to my concert. It was an open air radio concert where beforehand I was asked not to use the words colonialism, apartheid and genocide. And when I was singing, suddenly, only for the 4 songs I sang, a blonde policewoman stood right in front of me, watching every word I said and disappearing when I was done. And the whole event was from the afternoon till the night, no police at all, right? So, like, there are all these chilling effects, right, to intimidate people. And that is creepy. Nevertheless, there's so many people who stand up and speak up and create alternative spaces. I think it's crazy that now we're lucky that there's a private cultural institution like SPOR, because their events can take place, right, after Oyun has been closed, and which also was stating an example. I know of many other cases in Germany where social cultural centers or clubs or venues are threatened to be closed because they invite artists that have a pro-Palestinian stance. So collective liberation means that so many communities are still affected by the colonial continuities of the past, right? That have divided our regions in the global south, that have taken our resources, that have put intellectual narratives onto how we should think and speak and be in the world, right? So I think collective liberation means to unlearn that, and to see that we are all connected through the legacy of colonialism, and that this is not over. Yeah, that there's still so many continuities, and it doesn't matter if it's Palestine, the Kurdish people, the Armenian people, Sudan, Congo, and so many other indigenous struggles, right, in the Americas. Like, we have to see also struggles and other forms of discrimination. What does it mean for climate justice? What does it mean for disability justice? All of that belongs together, because in the end, it's about profit and capitalism. Like, this is the big reason for all forms of discrimination. For example, slavery and colonialism didn't happen after people invented racism. No, racism was invented to justify these crimes against humanity for the profit, for actually having capitalism exist. And I think what collective liberation means, and collective is already in the word, means that we come together as people and we overcome to be separated as humans, and as people that have the right for freedom, for dignity. In this year of genocide, I only managed to write one new song. And that song is really meaningful to me. It's called Layla, which means night in Arabic. And I named it that way because I think everyone knows of all these nights of being really worried, of not being able to sleep, of feeling anxious, of not knowing what's happening in Gaza. You know, I remember these nights end of October when they cut down the internet and we wouldn't even get information. So that song is about all these nights and acknowledging what people went through every night and still go through, the massive injustice being created. And it is also about, I came back from Palestine in mid-October, and I came to a Germany where some people at night, nothing had changed. They could sleep or party as if nothing had happened, while with our tax money, a genocide is being committed, right? So that song for me really is trying to acknowledge what our community is going through, and not only the traumatization, but also the resilience we carry. There's one part in the song where I sing acknowledging that also as Palestinians, of course, we're scattered all over the globe, right? Everyone has different privileges and hardship.
Yes, we all feel different pain, but the wound it's from still is the same. Resilience flows our veins, 'cause the root we share is not to tame.
And I think this is really important. And with this song, I tried to bring together both the heavy emotions we all in different ways go through, but also to keep going, you know, and to come together and to fight for liberation and justice and equal rights. The idea for Layla, I was jamming on Layla on the 9th of October with friends in Ramallah. And it was the first evening that we dared to even leave the house. You know, there were constant raids of army and settlers in all the towns. And we were coming together playing sad songs to feel less alone. And the TV was constantly running with the news. And, you know, we had all this really fearful energy. One evening, after many nights alone, some of my friends and I, we gathered to be a bit less alone with the news. At some point, we went on the rooftop to smoke a cigarette, and then a rocket was flying above us.
Fuck, did you see this rocket?
And it was so close and so loud. I mean, I've only known it from my dreams. I'm so privileged. I never saw a real rocket, right? And we thought it's coming down any second, and then it just disappeared in the direction of Gaza. And after this short moment of fear of death, this moment kicking in of guilt and shame that we are safe, while people like us that are trapped might be hit from that, you know. And that moment was so crucial for me also to write that song Layla. People always tell us as a band that they're surprised how we manage to speak of really hard political things, but also create joy. And I think this is for me the biggest compliment I got also for Layla, for that song, like that we managed to bring that together, because that's the full human experience, right? We're all of that. And the word is full of all of that.